Pacem, Dona Nobis Pacem, Dona Nobis Pacem, Dona Nobis Pacem, Nobis Pacem, Dona 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 Nobis Pacem. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna reach across our borders. Gonna reach across our borders. Gonna reach across our borders. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna teach our children courage. Gonna teach our children courage. Gonna teach our children courage. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back.
Good morning and welcome everyone to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. This is a congregation in the free faith tradition, a community of youth, adults, and children, bound not by creed, but by covenant. I'm Jillian Lampert, serving on your board of directors, and I use she, her pronouns. We are pleased and excited to welcome our new interim minister, Reverend Roger Birchhausen, to join us in today's service. He will be lighting our chalice in just a moment. Other service participants today include Reverend Jack Gady, Nico Van Ostren, Carol Coet, Margot Berg, the WB UUC Choir, and the Harmonia Women's Ensemble. Aaron Scott and Reverend Sarah Goodman are behind the scenes, making everything possible this morning. At 11:15 today, we will gather live for our cyber social hour, a half hour of easy conversation in small facilitated groups. All are welcome. The link is in the chat box. I also warmly welcome you to attend a circle round gathering today in person in the church atrium at 4 p.m. For this one, we ask that you sign up in advance or send an email to Reverend Sarah or Roger to let us know you're coming. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come in. Come into this space which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this space where we can heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this space where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this space. Together we make it a holy space, and welcome. Roger Birchhausen will light the chalice.
Good morning. I am Roger Birchhausen, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And it is such a joy to be here with you this morning. I'm imagining all of you out there virtually this morning, and one day soon, back in this beloved space. My other feeling this morning is fear. So we pre-recorded the services at my last interim church. We had a really good video guy who told us where to stand, when to speak. Yep, like chalice lighting, take 1 or take 9, for example, and he just take care of everything. Today, I have to know when and where to stand. I have to push mute and unmute. I have to come up front from the right direction and not trip over cords, and I have to avoid knocking over Jack's laptop. There's no take 2 today, and so I am afraid of making a mistake, afraid of making a bad first impression. So how lucky am I that Jack picked imperfection as the theme for today's sermon, and Nico found a wonderful story about a cracked pot. We are all welcome here, imperfections and all. This community is a place where we can be human. As Jack kindles our sacred flame today, I say hallelujah for a place where we can be ourselves, cracks and all. And I invite you to join in our opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another. And let's join together now in singing our hymn, To See the World, number 398, in Singing the Living Tradition.
This morning's story is called The Water Bearer's Garden by Betsy Hill Williams from You and Me Collected Stories. This story, like so many of the stories that we share at church, is calling us to do something, to change the way we think about and interact with the world around us. So as you take in the story today, I hope you'll pay attention to whatever deeper message you notice. A water bearer in India had two large pots, each hung on one end of a pole that he carried across his neck. One of the pots had a crack in it. At the end of the long walk from the stream to the house, the cracked pot arrived only half full, while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water. For 2 years, this went on daily, with the bearer delivering only 1.5 pots full of water to his house. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, perfect to the end for which it was made. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it was able to accomplish only half of what it had been made to do. After 2 years of what it perceived to be bitter failure, it spoke to the water bearer one day by the stream. "I am ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." "Why?" asked the bearer. "What are you ashamed of?" "I have been able for these past 2 years to deliver only half my load because this crack in my side causes water to leak out all the way back to the master's house. Because of my flaws, you have to do all this work and you don't get full value from our efforts," the pot said. The water bearer felt sorry for the cracked pot, and in his compassion, he said, "As we return to the house, I want you to notice the beautiful flowers along the path." Indeed, as they went up the hill, the old cracked pot took notice of the sun warming the beautiful wildflowers on the side of the path, and this cheered it some. But at the end of the trail, it still felt sad because it had leaked out half its load, and so again, the pot apologized to the bearer for its failure. The bearer said to the pot, "Did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known about your flaw, and I turned it into an advantage. I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while we walk back from the stream, you've watered them. For 2 years, I've been able to pick beautiful flowers to decorate the table. Without you being just the way you are, that beauty would not grace the house. We all have our own unique flaws. We are all cracked pots. In the great web of life, nothing goes to waste. So don't be afraid of your flaws. Acknowledge them, for you too are the cause of beauty."
Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Take a deep breath and find a comfortable place for your body. I will share words of meditation today that come from my treasured overseas colleague, Reverend Ted Gallardo, president of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Philippines. Source of life, taker of life, transformer of life, life itself, we implore you, hear us. Let us hear ourselves. Let us hear our own cries for help. Let us hear the pangs that rise from our bodies. Let us hear our bodies. Let us hear our breaths. Let us hear our living soul, its bellowing laughter and unquenchable fire. Let us hear our being moaning under the burdens of our own doing. Let us hear our own weight crush the earth which nourishes us. Let us hear ourselves cry out for nourishment. Let us hear our own nature longing to be. Let us hear our loving being longing to see. We implore you, see us. Let us see ourselves. Let us see that we are not alone, that life has riches and we can breathe them all in, that we need not be afraid, but instead take comfort. Let us see in order to distinguish what is right and what is true. Let us see the effervescent longings of others to like us without our feeling obliged. Let us see the lakes of furious madness that pull us under. Let us see what forces us to succumb to wrongs. Let us see that singular moment when we could say no with triumph, to step back, look in, and laugh. Let us see that most absurd point of clarity when change can happen. Let us find that lost ground that all humanity walk on as if they were one people. Let us see what wicked lies divide us so we can be who we are. We implore you, be us, be in us, be of us, be for us. Amen.
Your financial gift to our congregation goes to support the programs we've come to rely on as anchors in our lives. Programs for youth and families, music, classes and small groups, justice work and public witness, pastoral care, rites of passage, and Sunday services. You can contribute to the offering today by sending a check or by following the easy prompt to text to give on your screen.
In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times. In these hard times, there will always be singing in these hard times.
Our first reading is a poem by the 19th century Unitarian minister William Henry Channing. It is called My Symphony. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion. To be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich, to study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly, to listen to stars and birds and babes and sages with open heart, to bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual unbidden and unconscious grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony. And the second reading is from The Parents Doubting by William Martin. Do not ask your children to strive for extraordinary lives. Such striving may seem admirable, but it is the way of foolishness. Help them instead to find the wonder and the marvel of an ordinary life. Show them the joy of tasting tomatoes, apples, and pears. Show them how to cry when pets and people die. Show them the infinite pleasure in the touch of a hand, and make the ordinary come alive for them. The extraordinary will take care of itself.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands of far and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating, with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Back in 2020, we hosted an online auction, and one of the items that I put up for bidding was preaching a sermon on a topic of the winning bidder's choice. It's a risky auction item because I never know what the winning bidder is going to choose as a sermon topic. I could always be asked to preach about the art of motorcycle maintenance, for instance, and then I'd have to admit that I don't really understand how an engine works. As much as I liked the mathy part of physics, I just don't have the genetics that compel me to figure out how something works by taking it apart and then putting it back together again. Not my skill and not my passion. I am much more interested in spending my time thinking about how people work and what makes them tick. I've always been more curious about sociology, linguistics, and even, as it turns out, sports psychology. So imagine my relief when Reggie Baresh won the auction item and emailed me the following suggestion for a sermon topic. She wrote, I recognize that very few ever reach the top tier of anything. I consider myself to be a bench warmer in the game of life. There are so many like us. Is it okay to be a bench warmer? How can we be content with that level of achievement? If it's okay, why do we push our children to succeed at any cost, to always be winners, even at great financial and emotional toll? Well, this email was followed by a lovely conversation to suss out the topic a bit. And little did I know 4 months ago that I'd be preaching this sermon today during the 2020 Olympic Games, but here we are. Reggie explained that her status as bench warmer wasn't about passivity or not really trying, but rather a realistic grasp on things. She didn't have to be the best instrumentalist in her orchestra to enjoy playing her instrument, even though she was very good. And she didn't need to be the soloist. Some people are content to be out of the limelight and happy to play their part, even when that part is on the sidelines or a supporting role. She's been watching successive generations of kids and young people being pushed towards success in unhealthy ways, pushed to their limits. And she asked me, do you think there's a sermon in there? Yes, Reggie, yes, I do. The power of benchwarmers. Had any of you heard of the Twisties before this month? I consider myself a huge gymnastics fan, and I had never heard of it. For those who don't know, the Twisties are what happens when elite gymnasts and other twisting athletes lose their sense of direction while twisting and flying through the air. They lose control of their own limbs and hence their twisting bodies, and they lose sight of the ground and their relation to it. And it's not just gymnasts. Think of all the other sports with flying, twisting athletes. We have divers, ski jumpers, trick snowboarders, BMX bikers, trampoliners. An athlete experiencing the twisties is in a state of disorientation. Now, if that's not an apt metaphor for the moment, I don't know what is, but we'll get to that later. For those of us who don't flip or twist for a living, or even for a hobby, it might be hard to imagine not being disoriented mid-flip. But that's exactly what they do. A trampoliner or trick snowboarder must land on their feet, while on the other hand, a diver must enter the water hands first. These two things are very different impulses that require knowing exactly where you are in relation to the relevant surface, whether that surface is a landing mat, a trampoline, snow, or water. As I'm sure many of you already know, this past week, Simone Biles withdrew from a few days of competition, citing mental health concerns. She knew her mental health was off because she had begun to experience the twisties. She checked in with her doctor, who told her that she was not cleared to perform because it would be unsafe. So she became a voluntary benchwarmer. She put on her training jacket and cheered on her teammates. This moment rippled through the news that day with so many repercussions, and it also sent some really important messages. First of all, she used her platform to talk about the importance of prioritizing mental health, which inspired others to do the same. Michael Phelps, in his role as NBC commentator, was able to talk about the sometimes debilitating nature of the pressure that some Olympic athletes feel. There's actually a documentary called The Weight of Gold, where Phelps and other Olympic athletes are interviewed about this exact subject. Secondly, by listening to her doctors and choosing to sit out, she created more opportunities for her fellow gymnasts to compete, to medal, and to shine, which they did. All 6 of the Team USA female gymnasts left Tokyo with a medal. And finally, she went from the presumptive star of Team USA at this year's Olympics to the biggest fan and cheerleader of the remaining gymnasts. And she didn't just cheer on and console her teammates in their glory and defeat. She did the same with their competitors as well. I don't know if y'all have been following the Olympics like I have, but I'm always interested to watch the drama, to see the highs and the lows, and to see what kind of life lessons I can learn. In all honesty, it's been quite the emotional roller coaster. Yes, it's a competition, but it's also cooperation. Did any of you see the 2 high jumpers that chose to share the gold medal? Wow, I mean, what an incredible moment. They could have kept going with a tiebreaker until there was only one winner, but instead they chose to share the medal. It was a real emotional highlight for me. And it was also a somewhat countercultural moment. In a society that says there can only be one winner, their decision was a radical one. Our society sometimes values success and achievement so highly that people even tolerate getting there through domination or cheating or by any means necessary. But what happens when we decide to use our own rubric for success? Probably the best piece of advice I've ever been given is find your own rubric for success. I didn't get it at first, but when it sunk in, it really sunk in. So let me explain. I was preparing myself to do a job interview. Obviously, I wanted the job. Why else would I be applying for it? And I was telling my mentor at the time about my stress and anxiety before the interview. She looked at me and asked, "What will need to happen for you to define the interview as a success?" Well, I thought it was a silly question and said, "Getting the job." And then she said, "What if you or they decide that you are not a good fit for the job and you still get the job? Would that still be a success?" Well, obviously it wouldn't be great, but I really wanted the job. But when I stopped to think about it, I realized I would consider that an unsuccessful outcome. She then gave me a different rubric for success. Go into the interview and be as truthful and authentic as you can be. Show them who you really are. That should be your goal. If you've done that, it's a success. Well, with that new rubric in mind, I mean, 2 things happened. First, I was much more comfortable during the interview because I'd shifted my focus and my own goal. And secondly, I didn't get the job. But it was because they were very clear that they were looking for a different type of candidate who brought something I didn't have, namely more experience. I wouldn't have been a good fit there because I would have been constantly disappointing them by not being the candidate that they were looking for. Obtaining that helpful data was actually the goal, and reframing my rubric for success helped me get there. William Henry Channing also offered a reframing of success almost 200 years old, and it still has much relevance today. He encourages us to hear and asks us to resonate with what he calls his symphony. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion. To be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich. To study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly, to listen to stars and birds and babes and sages with open heart, to bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden and unconscious, grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony. Such beautiful words from one of our Unitarian ancestors, and also so hard to live by. To live content with small means has been an important virtue of my life, as has been the admonition to listen to the stars and the birds. But elegance and refinement are not the two first words used to describe me. Bear all cheerfully is a goal, albeit unfulfilled, but I still have a ways to go on do all bravely. He encourages us to be worthy, not respectable, which I have interpreted to mean focus more on your worth than on how much or whether you are esteemed or respected. In other words, know your own worth and place a higher value on that self-assessment than on the worth assessment that others give you. One line that really struck me, though, is his admonition to await occasions, hurry never. During the lead up to this year's Olympics, I learned the US women's water polo team did just that. They traveled together to Colorado to climb Mount Democrat. They spent multiple days together in near total silence, practicing meditation, connecting to the earth and to each other. They climbed the mountain once the first day, twice the second, and 3 times the third day. And it was a grueling practice. But through that journey in adversity, they became a stronger team. Challenges will come our way too. We are in the middle right now of multiple transitions. We should heed Channing's words, await occasions, hurry never. We can't rush our way through this time because there is so much to learn about ourselves, about each other. We're also learning about how much a community can thrive when we're all contributing to its thriving in a way that allows us to feel alive and balanced and that's sustainable. This is why William Martin instructs us in his book, The Parent's Tao Te Ching, not to ask our children to strive for extraordinary lives. And I would say his admonition works for all of us, doesn't it? Not that extraordinariness can't be lauded, but it will take care of itself if first we learn to find the wonder and marvel of an ordinary life. Take your time. Let the spiritual grow up through the common, unbidden and unconscious. And isn't that what we've been doing for the last 17 months? When the extraordinary and the epic were unattainable, we focused on the ordinary, the common, the everyday. And that's where we found some of our joy, right? Our lives are so limited that we're forced to find little moments of joy and wonder that would buoy our spirits. We began to celebrate our everyday emergency workers as heroes in healthcare, food delivery, education, all the industries really. We let ourselves operate around 70% productivity without lowering our own sense of self-esteem and worth. I don't know about you, but I am proud of us for making it this far through an incredibly devastating pandemic and a toxic election cycle and presidency, among other intense challenges over the past few years. I'm proud of us for learning more about sourdoughs and Zoom, and for prioritizing adaptability and self-care, the deep practice of taking care of ourselves, for knowing and naming our needs so that we can build a plan to meet them. I'm proud of us for knowing our limits. If you have the twisties, you can withdraw and sit on the bench for a bit. Let your teammates carry the baton for a while. We are in this together and we are part of the same team. Let's cheer each other on and support one another. Right now, we have a reopening task force whose job it is to help us figure out a way forward into a time of gathering where safety and accessibility and inclusion for all can be balanced together. It won't be perfect, that's not the goal. We might try things that don't work, and we might fail to try things that could have worked. But again, perfection is not the goal. It never was. We're going to be prioritizing the power of the ordinary, the power of the benchwarmer. Gathering together has been our goal, and we've been doing it virtually for quite some time. We've begun meeting in person for some small group gatherings, and in September, we're hoping to be adding more in-person possibilities to the mix. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. We're going to need a team of helpers of all types to make these services happen. Not just welcomers and chalice lighters, but also people helping behind the scenes to prepare this space and make it beautiful. I'm going to be recruiting your help over the next few weeks, but if you want to beat me to the punch and you're interested in helping, please let me know. We hope to find a task for everyone that fits their skills and interests and strengths. So to answer Raju's question, yes, let's celebrate the benchwarmers. Let's celebrate those who find contentment in the ordinary. Let's celebrate the contributors who might not be the most visible or the most vocal, but whose contribution is still vital nonetheless. In Olympic terms, I've learned, the deciding factor between a good team and a great team is often the depth of the bench. It is so important to have a strong and caring and well-rested bench. Let's celebrate the power of the benchwarmers. This perspective, especially right now, will help us as our congregation is in the middle of these two transitions. We're undergoing a major staff transition while we are trying to figure out a reopening plan that is safe, accessible, and inclusive. It's almost as if we are spinning in midair, flipping and twisting. We might not know where we are or where the ground is, and it might feel like the ground is actually moving below us. To some, this moment might feel like the twisties. So how should we proceed? How are we going to measure our success? Is gold the only option? Will we speed ahead no matter what the cost to our physical and mental health? Or might we take a lesson from Simone Biles? My colleague, Joanna Fontaine Crawford, said it well in her blog this week. She writes, "Do like Simone, take it day by day. Yes, she pulled out from last week's competition, but she didn't quit gymnastics. She didn't even quit these Olympics. She took it day by day. She separated out what she couldn't do and what she could. She got back up on the balance beam and won a bronze medal, a medal she says that means more to her than the golds. And she took heart from all the people cheering her on for being her authentic self." And the thing I want to add about Simone's bronze medal winning balance beam routine is that she took out the spinning dismount and replaced it with a simpler one. She very well might be able to do flips and twists again, but right now she knew her limits. She set her own realistic bar of success and she met it. What is going to be our measure for success here at WBUUC? How are we going to land this flip? If our goal is to keep Victoria and all ministers here as our ministers forever, then we have set an unrealistic goal and set ourselves up for failure. But if instead we have a goal of learning from and with our ministers and learning a lot about ourselves by the way that we enter into covenantal relationship with each other and with our ministers, then we're more likely to succeed. If we let people into our lives through the deep sharing that happens in community, then we have a much better possibility for viewing this moment as a potential success. We are in a moment of transition when we are being called to open ourselves up again to a new minister as a way to practice what it's like to let someone in. It's not always easy, but we've done it before. We're also being called to be open to our congregation gathering in new ways and trying new things. We can't expect it to be perfect because it won't be, but we might be surprised by what else it could be. We are using cracked vessels like Nico taught us in their story. And we don't always see that. We are watering flowers with our imperfections. We are creating beauty. The extraordinary grows from the ordinary. If we allow it, the spiritual will grow up unbidden and unconscious through the common. May it be so, and make it so. Amen. And please join me for the final hymn, number 6, in singing the living tradition, just as long as I have breath.
Please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It is good to worship with you, and I look forward to regathering soon as the imperfect yet beautiful community that we are, and finding the flowers that our imperfections have been watering. I hope you'll join us at 11:15 in just a few minutes here for Cyber Social Hour, and again in person at 4 p.m. for our Circle Around gathering. Be well, friends. Go forth in peace and in the power of your contentment.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore. May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore. May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence